Alright, what's going on, guys? Over the past few months, Elden Ring has kind of taken a backseat to all the hype surrounding FromSoftware's next game, Armored Core 6. Because as it stands right now, it's looking like Elden Ring DLC is a long ways away. But the fortunate thing about that is that it gives us time to prepare. So if you've been looking for an excuse to hop back into this adventure once again, today we're going to highlight 5 things you can do right now to optimize your DLC experience. When it comes to FromSoftware games, one thing we always need to take advantage of is optimization, making sure we use every tool at our disposal to overcome the challenges in these games. But today I want to tell you how you can take that optimization beyond the game. And that's with the sponsor of today's video, Opera GX. Fellas, if you're tired of the bland and boring internet browsers that you use every day, Opera GX provides a browser handmade and tailored to us gamers, with fantastic features to make your PC life easier, such as being able to control things like how much RAM and CPU usage your browser takes, as well as having links and quick access to all the sites a gamer needs. But beyond that, you can trick it out however you like with mods, with really cool ones such as the medieval mod that I'm using here. It adds a lot to your browsing experience, such as background music, keyboard sounds, opening and closing tab sounds, cool wallpapers and colors, all of which you can control with a simple click. But switching to Opera GX is a seamless experience, able to import everything from your last browser with one simple press. So if you want to further optimize your PC and upgrade your browsing experience, download Opera GX with my link down in the description below. And a massive thank you to Opera for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get back into it. We made this same kind of video a long time ago, back before we even had the Coliseum update. But with the knowledge we have now and the understanding that this DLC is going to be big, I'm gonna lead with a very similar point, and this might be the most important on the list. If you've already beaten the game, make a new character. So am I telling you to go all the way back to the title screen, restart the entire game? Yes, and there's a very good reason for that. You will not want to play this DLC with a character that's already beaten the game. Not only to not play it in New Game Plus, but also so that you're not over-leveled for the experience, which, believe it or not, is probably easier to do than you think. I'll mention around the same point that I said in that last video. The DLCs in the Souls games are typically the hardest part of the game, and I can assure you Elden Ring is going to be no different. But because the DLCs are so hard, that's part of the reason we love them so much. But if you go into this DLC with a character that's level 500 that you spend hours grinding for levels on, you will rob yourself. I can assure you, the experience you get from the DLC will be much more fun and much more rewarding if you play it at the intended level. And I know that sounds like gatekeeper talk, but it's true. So what is that recommended level? As it stands right now, we really don't know anything about where we're going to access the DLC or what level it's going to be. But we can work off context clues and history of DLCs and other FromSoftware games. For me personally, I'm going to be going into the DLC around level 120 to 130, since that puts me at the bottom of the recommended level for some of the hardest bosses in the game. That's a good level to still be able to take on the harder challenges in the main game after beating the DLC. And not only that, it still allows room for me to upgrade my build to tailor to the unexpected encounters we're going to have. And it also tends to be the level range with the most multiplayer matchmaking, which I will definitely be taking part in the DLC. So I highly recommend having a character in this level range because you'll be able to get the most out of your experience. My second recommendation is going to build off the first. It's another reason why you want to make a new character, and that is so that you can keep some of the major bosses alive, as well as keeping some of the main quests available, because we don't know what the DLC is going to retroactively affect. We haven't really had this done in many of the FromSoftware games before, but Elden Ring is absolutely the best opportunity to make something like this happen. And that's because so many of the stories in Elden Ring overlap, and it looks like the DLC is going to heavily. We're fairly certain that the DLC is going to revolve around Miquella, one of the most enigmatic characters in all of Elden Ring's lore. And if that is the case, we have a lot of quest lines here that could change dramatically with knowledge of Miquella. Firstly, and most obviously, is Malenia. I would highly recommend keeping her alive when you first go through the DLC, because when we find her, she's in a perpetual state of waiting for Miquella. And if he's going to be a major player in the story of the DLC, I simply can't imagine that there won't be a new interaction here. Kind of like how in Dark Souls 1, if you did the DLC before fighting Sif, then you got an alternate cutscene upon entering his boss fight. There is a golden opportunity here with Malenia and Miquella's reunion. Mohg is another boss that I'm going to be leaving alive. Now, it is highly speculated that the entrance to the DLC might be Miquella's corpse hand, and if that is the case, we're gonna have no choice but to kill Mohg. But if it's not, then we have another prime candidate for a secret interaction, because of course Mohg is the keeper of Miquella's body. But we also theorize that a big part of the DLC will be the ghost graves that we can see around the field in the image, implying that another big part of the lore here will be those who live in death, which is why I'm also going to be keeping Fia alive, because I could definitely see more of this quest being expanded upon if characters like Godwyn also end up being major players. And then obviously leave Radagon and Elden Beast alive, because the DLC will almost definitely introduce a new ending. The bottom line here is that you don't want to restrict your options, because we have no idea the level of changes that are going to be made to the main game whenever the DLC drops. Up next, we're going to be doing a bit of scavenging, and this will consume most of your time preparing, because we'll need to collect a ton of items. There are 4 main things that we're going to want to try to get as many of as possible, and those are number 1, bell bearings, number 2, talismans, number 3, weapons, and number 4, armor. And you might be thinking, well, obviously wouldn't it be good to have every item in the game? And yes, it would. But the thing is, in a game like Elden Ring, it's easy to focus on one specific build and then ignore all the items that don't work with it. But the thing is, the DLC is going to introduce so many new items, so many new weapons and pieces of equipment that you're gonna want to try out and you may end up liking. And if that is the case, then having all of the talismans and armor sets that can help potentially maximize that build with the new weapon will save you so much time and hassle once you're in the DLC. And with the ability to respec being so freely given, this should definitely be something you consider. Now, if by this point you manage to collect all the items we were talking about without killing the bosses or NPCs that we mentioned earlier, then I'm sorry, but we're still not done. Now we gotta go hunting for upgrade materials, and there's really only 2 ways to do this. If you want to farm them from enemies, you'll have to fight the golems across many of the dungeons throughout Elden Ring, but the drop chance is so low here that you probably won't even be done farming them by the time the DLC drops, even if it is next year. Instead, if you took my advice and now have all the bell bearings, this process can get a lot easier. All you need to do now is farm for runes. Now obviously one of the best rune farms in the game can be found right here in Mohgwyn Palace on the Palace Approach Ledge Road. Just get a bow and arrow and shoot the crow, and he'll try to charge you and run off the cliff, and then you got yourself a free 11k runes. This is also a fantastic farm for leveling up your new character that we created. It's super quick and easy and doesn't take a lot of resources or focus. And after doing this for about 30 minutes to an hour, you should be set and good to go. Now to fully upgrade a weapon, you need 12 of each type of smithing stone. So personally, I'm going to be going in with 24 of each smithing stone and then 2 of each type of somber, and that should be plenty to experiment with the DLC weapons. The 5th bit of preparation that I think you'll want to do for the DLC is have a solid PvP build even if you don't regularly play it. I do fully expect the Colosseums to get a bit of an overhaul because in all reality they were a little bit of a disappointment. Now in the Souls games, the Colosseums all got new maps with each DLC, and I imagine Elden Ring will follow a similar track because there's been a lot of fan outcry for it. But even beyond map design, FromSoftware have made clear that PvP is a big part of their vision, and I could definitely see them including much more with the Colosseums in the actual DLC release. Now exactly what form that will take, I really don't know. We could see new modes, we could get an actual reward structure or leaderboards, or they could even bring covenants back. Regardless of the Colosseums though, the DLCs and FromSoftware games consistently have the best PvP experience. Even if they don't introduce a dedicated PvP boss like they did in Dark Souls 3, the level design typically makes for some of the best invasions you can do. So my point here is, even if you're not a dedicated PvP player, or if you didn't enjoy the PvP of the main game, it'll be worth at least having, because there will be PvP updates included with the DLC, we just don't know what form they're going to take. But for the final little bonus tip of what to do before the DLC drops, I gotta say get caught up on the lore. Because if there's anything that we know the DLC is going to do for a fact, it's going to turn this story on its head. And so in order to get the most out of it, it's better to have the context going in. Now we've made a few lore videos here on the channel talking about what the DLC could potentially cover, and I do definitely recommend watching those, but there are a few people that do it way better than me. I highly recommend taking the time to check out Smotown, Vadividia, Crunchy, Tarnished Archaeologist, and many others, because they all bring fantastic perspectives to a very confusing story. But if you've done everything we talked about on this list, you will be more than prepared to take on the DLC. I think by this point, it's safe to assume that we're not going to be hearing much about the DLC until after Armored Core 6 drops, and so this lull period that we're in right now is the perfect time to make sure you have everything in order. And if you have other suggestions of ways to prepare for the DLC that we didn't cover in this video, be sure to leave those in the comments section down below. Either way though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it, and subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring and FromSoftware. Once again, again, and big thank you to Opera GX for sponsoring today's video, and with all that, I will catch you in the next one.